The impossible shot echoed across the desolate range, silencing every battle-hardened veteran in its wake. A teenage girl, barely old enough to drive, had just accomplished what elite snipers trained decades to achieve. How the hell did she do it? Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Dawn broke over the Hindu Kush Mountains, casting long shadows across Valley 223 near Bram Air Base in Afghanistan. Intelligence officer Lieutenant Ramirez squinted at the surveillance feed, his coffee forgotten as he spotted the unmistakable signature of a vehicle-borne IED cell. The terrorists were setting up just 3.8 kilometers from the base perimeter, close enough to cause devastating damage. "Get me Colonel Harrington," he barked, eyes never leaving the screen. The base commander arrived within minutes, face grim as he assessed the threat. 4 men moved with practiced efficiency around a modified SUV, their leader gesturing toward the base. "Response teams?" Colonel Harrington asked. "All deployed in Sector 7. Air support is 20 minutes out, minimum." The colonel's jaw tightened. "That's too long. They'll be mobile in 5. The surveillance feed showed the high-value target, a man responsible for dozens of American casualties, directing the operation. Suddenly, without warning, the man's head snapped back. He crumpled to the ground as his confused companions scattered for cover. "What just happened?" Harrington demanded. Lieutenant Ramirez rewound the footage, studying it frame by frame. "Sir, I think he was shot." "That's impossible. There's no team in that sector." 3 hours later, after special forces secured the compound, Captain Miller radioed back with confirmation. "Sir, we found a single casualty, their leader. 1 shot, center mass." His voice held disbelief. "We recovered something else too. A spent .338 Lapua Magnum casing with an engraving." "What does it say?" Harrington asked. "For Michael, sir." The impossible shot became the talk of the base. Ballistics experts calculated the distance at 3,800 meters, well beyond the established record for a confirmed kill. The trajectory suggested the shot had been taken from a rocky outcrop to the northwest, but extensive searches revealed no firing position, no evidence of a shooter's presence. In the following days, every American and Allied sniper was questioned. None claimed responsibility. The Pentagon launched a classified investigation, but the shooter remained a ghost. Military analysts argued it was impossible. The bullet would have dropped nearly 200 feet over that distance. Wind variables alone made such accuracy unthinkable. Some said it was a statistical miracle, a 1 in a million shot that somehow found its mark. Only the engraving, "For Michael," offered any clue to the shooter's identity or motivation. As weeks passed with no answers, the legend of the impossible shot grew, whispered among soldiers and marksmen worldwide. Someone had shattered the limits of what experts believed possible, then vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a brass casing and a mystery that would haunt military circles for years to come. The Pentagon's investigation into the impossible shot was as thorough as it was secretive. Codenamed Operation Longshot, it consumed 6 months of intensive analysis by the military's finest ballistics experts. They scrutinized weather data, trajectory models, and equipment capabilities, yet found no plausible explanation for how anyone could have made a 3,800-meter shot with such precision. Eventually, the file was stamped inconclusive and archived in some forgotten digital vault. Master Sergeant James Old Bull Thompson leaned against the polished oak podium in Horizon Shooting Academy's main hall, sunlight streaming through tall windows behind him. His weathered face carried the gravitas of a man who had seen more than most could imagine. "That shot shouldn't have been possible," Thompson told the 24 elite shooters seated before him. "Not with current technology. Not with human capability as we understand it." The group, former military operators, law enforcement specialists, and accomplished civilian marksmen, exchanged skeptical glances. Sarah Mitchell, seated in the corner, arms crossed over her MARSOC veteran's frame, watched their reactions carefully. The bullet flight time would have been nearly 7 seconds, Thompson continued, his voice carrying the authority of decades behind a rifle. In that time, the Earth's rotation affects trajectory. Wind patterns change. Hell, the target could have moved inches in any direction. Marcus Reed, a former Army Ranger with 3 tours in hostile territory, raised his hand. With respect, sir, are we talking about an actual event or a tall tale to motivate us? The instructor's eyes narrowed slightly. I don't deal in fairy tales, Reed. This happened. The impossible shot had become something of a legend in military circles, whispered about on firing ranges from Quantico to Qatar, debated in barracks worldwide. Some attributed it to extraordinary luck. Others, particularly those who'd spent enough time in combat zones to develop superstitions, spoke of divine intervention. A few conspiracy theorists insisted it was evidence of classified technology being field-tested. None came close to the truth. Frank Wilson, the Academy's administrative director, stood quietly at the back of the room, observing the cohort's reactions. He'd heard Thompson tell this story before, had seen how it affected even the most jaded shooters. Tomorrow, Thompson said, placing both hands on the podium, we begin your training in earnest. Not because any of you will make a shot like that, you won't, but because understanding the outer limits of what's possible forces us to reconsider what's achievable. As the group filed out, conversations already buzzing with speculation, Sarah approached Thompson. You really believe someone made that shot, don't you? She asked quietly. The old instructor nodded, his eyes distant. I don't just believe it, Sarah. I'm counting on finding out how the hell they did it. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Horizon Shooting Academy's main hall, illuminating the faces of 24 trainees seated in a semicircle. They represented the cream of America's marksmanship talent, former Delta operators, Marine Scout snipers, FBI tactical specialists, and a handful of civilian competition shooters whose names carried weight in long-range circles. Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of the group, arms crossed over her chest. The scars on her forearms, souvenirs from Fallujah, caught the light as she shifted her weight. With all due respect, Bull, she addressed Thompson, you're setting unrealistic expectations. The Marine veteran's voice carried the weight of someone who had seen the difference between range theory and battlefield reality. 3,800 meters isn't just difficult, Sarah continued, scanning the faces of the trainees. It's beyond what most ballistic computers can reliably calculate. Wind alone would drift a bullet dozens of feet at that distance. Marcus Reed, a broad-shouldered former Army Ranger with 3 tours in Afghanistan, leaned forward. So you're saying it's bullshit? His question hung in the air, directed at both instructors. Thompson smiled, the creases around his eyes deepening. I'm saying it happened. The Pentagon investigation confirmed the distance and the target. What they couldn't confirm was who took the shot. Could it have been luck? Asked a female police sniper from Seattle. You don't engrave a bullet casing for luck, Thompson replied. Frank Wilson appeared at the back of the room, clipboard in hand, observing the discussion with quiet interest. The administrative director had heard this debate play out with every new cohort. The point isn't whether you believe it happened, Sarah interjected. The point is understanding that mastery begins with respecting limitations before you try to overcome them. A murmur rippled through the group as they processed her words. The Academy's 15,000 acres of Montana wilderness waited outside, terrain specifically chosen to challenge even the most accomplished shooters. That's why you're here, Thompson added, his voice softening. Not to chase impossible shots, but to push your personal boundaries, meter by meter. The trainees nodded, some still skeptical, others inspired by the mystery. As they filed out toward the equipment room, the legend of the 3,800-meter shot hung in the air, an invisible presence that would haunt their training for weeks to come. None of them noticed how Sarah's eyes followed Thompson with a question that remained unasked, or how Thompson himself glanced toward the eastern ridgeline with an expression that suggested he knew more than he was sharing. Sarah Mitchell leaned against the wooden rail of the observation deck, the Montana sun highlighting the jagged scar that ran from her left temple to her jawline. The cohort had fallen silent, waiting for her response to their questions about her own combat experience. 3,100 meters, she finally said, her voice steady but quiet. Fallujah, 2007. MARSOC operation. Our forward team was pinned down by a sniper in a minaret. She paused, running her finger absently along the scar. I had a crosswind that kept shifting. Took 3 calculations before I found the sweet spot. Thompson nodded with unmistakable pride. What Sarah won't tell you is that shot stood as the unofficial American record for 4 years. Would have been official, too, if the operation hadn't been classified. The trainees exchanged impressed glances. Marcus Reed whistled softly, his earlier skepticism momentarily forgotten, as he regarded the female instructor with newfound respect. These days, Thompson continued, sweeping his arm across the vast Montana wilderness that surrounded them. The records are being broken by Russians, Canadians, Brits. 15,000 acres of varying terrain. That's why I built Horizon here. America needs to reclaim its edge. Frank Wilson appeared at the edge of the group, clipboard in hand, nodding in agreement. The administrative director had been with Thompson since the Academy's inception, believing fully in its mission. It's not just about distance, Sarah added, pushing herself away from the railing. Any decent marksman with the right equipment can hit a target at extreme range if conditions are perfect and they've got all day to set up. Thompson picked up her thread seamlessly. The technology keeps improving. Better optics, more precise ammunition, rifles that practically aim themselves. But that's not what makes a true marksman. What does then? Emily Lawson asked, the senator's daughter speaking up for the first time that morning. The veteran instructor turned to face the 17-year-old, studying her with interest. Mindset, artistry, the ability to become one with your environment rather than fighting against it. He tapped his temple. The best shots happen here first, before you ever touch the trigger. Sarah nodded. In combat, you rarely get perfect conditions or unlimited time. You get one moment, one breath, one heartbeat between life and death. That's what separates technicians from artists, Thompson concluded, his weathered face solemn. Anyone can learn to operate a rifle. We're here to teach you to become the shot itself. The group fell silent, absorbing his words as they gazed out over the academy grounds, each trainee wondering if they had what it took to reach such mastery. The morning light filtered through the reinforced windows of Horizon's armory as Master Sergeant James Old Bull Thompson guided the trainees through rows of precision instruments. The polished wood and gleaming metal of dozens of rifles caught the sunlight, each weapon representing the pinnacle of long-range accuracy. Ladies and gentlemen, Thompson announced, his weathered hands lifting a massive Barrett M82. These aren't just tools. They're extensions of yourselves. He passed the heavy rifle to Marcus Reed, who received it with practiced hands. .50 caliber, effective range of 1,500 meters in the right conditions. Sarah Mitchell moved among the group, her experience evident in how she handled each weapon. The Macmillan TAC-50, she explained, indicating a sleek rifle mounted on a nearby rack. Canadian snipers use this platform for 3 of the top 5 longest confirmed kills in history. Her fingers trace the barrel with something like reverence. But it's not the rifle that makes the shot. Thompson nodded in agreement. A $2,000 rifle in the hands of a $5,000 shooter will outperform a $5,000 rifle in the hands of a $2,000 shooter every time. The cohort moved deeper into the armory where the CHATAC N200 rifles were displayed. These weapons, with their distinctive profiles and match-grade components, represented the cutting edge of ballistic science. This, Thompson said, is what separates artists from technicians. Anyone can pull a trigger. Few can truly shoot. The veteran instructor demonstrated proper form, explaining how breath control, trigger discipline, and mental focus mattered more than expensive optics or custom stocks. Sarah shared stories from her deployments, describing how fundamentals had saved her life in Fallujah when technology failed. Your mind is your primary weapon, she emphasized. The rifle is secondary. As the trainees examined the various platforms, discussing their merits and limitations, the heavy door to the armory swung open. Frank Wilson, Horizon's administrative director, stood in the doorway, his usually composed face marked with concern. "James," Frank called, gesturing for Thompson to join him. "We need to talk. There's a situation." Thompson excused himself, stepping aside with the administrator. Their hushed conversation grew increasingly animated, with Thompson shaking his head repeatedly. "Absolutely not," Thompson's voice rose above a whisper. "We don't train minors." "That's always been our policy." The trainees exchanged glances, curiosity evident in their expressions. Sarah continued the lesson, but her attention kept drifting to the intense discussion by the door. Finally, Thompson rejoined the group, his expression unreadable. "Let's continue with the fundamentals," he said, though his mind seemed elsewhere. Whatever Frank had shared had clearly disturbed the seasoned instructor. As they exited the armory, Sarah caught Thompson's eye. Something had changed. Something that would test not just their skills as instructors, but the very principles upon which Horizon Academy was built. Frank Wilson strode into the office with a troubled expression, waving a note in his hand. "We've got a situation, Bull. Senator Robert Lawson just called, wants to enroll his daughter at Horizon." Master Sergeant James Thompson looked up from his paperwork, frowning. "The senator's kid? How old?" 17, Frank replied, wincing as he anticipated the reaction. 17? Thompson's voice rose. "We don't train minors, Frank. You know that. I don't care if her father runs the whole damn government." The administrative director sighed, leaning against the doorframe. "I told him that. But he was insistent. Said Emily's been around firearms her entire life. Competitive shooting since she was 12. Thompson shook his head. "Still doesn't change our policy." "There's more," Frank continued. "The senator mentioned she wants to follow in her brother's footsteps, Michael Lawson." The name hung in the air between them. Thompson's expression softened slightly. Michael Lawson had been one of the finest marksmen to come through Horizon before his military service, and his death in Afghanistan 3 years ago. "I remember Michael," Thompson said quietly. "Good kid. Exceptional shooter." Frank handed him the phone. "Senator's waiting for your call. Said it's important." 10 minutes later, Thompson was engaged in a tense conversation with one of the most powerful men in Washington. The senator's voice carried both authority and unexpected vulnerability. "I understand your concerns, Sergeant Thompson," Senator Lawson said. "But Emily isn't just any teenager. Since Michael's death, she's been driven, almost obsessed. She needs structure, mentorship, the kind only Horizon can provide." "With all due respect, sir, we're not babysitters," Thompson countered. "I'm not asking you to babysit," the senator replied sharply. "I'm asking you to train someone who might be even more gifted than her brother was." Thompson paused, considering. "Why Horizon specifically? There are plenty of civilian training programs that accept minors." The silence stretched before the senator answered. "Because you knew Michael, because he trusted you, and because," his voice faltered, "I'm afraid of what she might become without proper guidance." The former sergeant rubbed his temples. The request violated protocol, but he couldn't ignore the weight of legacy or the plea of a father who clearly saw both tremendous potential and risk in his daughter. "I'll meet her," Thompson finally conceded. "No promises beyond that. If she doesn't have what it takes, or if I sense any problems, she's out, senator's daughter or not. That's all I'm asking," Senator Lawson replied, relief evident in his voice. "She'll be there tomorrow morning." As Thompson hung up, Sarah Mitchell appeared in the doorway, eyebrow raised questioningly. "We're getting a new student," he explained. "Emily Lawson. The senator's daughter? Sarah asked. Isn't she too young? Apparently, Thompson sighed. She's Michael Lawson's sister. A black SUV rolled up the gravel driveway of Horizon Shooting Academy precisely at 7 in the morning. Emily Lawson stepped out, her movements fluid and economical, nothing like the awkward energy of most 17-year-olds. She carried a single duffel bag and a hard rifle case, both well-worn but meticulously maintained. Master Sergeant James Old Bull Thompson and Sarah Mitchell watched from the main entrance as the teenager approached. Her posture was unmistakable, spine straight, shoulders relaxed, eyes constantly scanning her surroundings. It wasn't the bearing of a politician's daughter, but of someone who had spent time in operational environments. Senator Lawson's daughter looks like she's clearing a building in Fallujah, not arriving at summer camp, Sarah whispered. Emily set her bags down and extended her hand first to Thompson, then to Sarah. Thank you for the opportunity, sir, ma'am. Her voice was clear, direct, and devoid of the entitlement they had expected. Let's get one thing straight, Thompson said, crossing his arms. Your father's position means nothing here. You'll receive no special treatment. I wouldn't want any, Emily replied without hesitation. I'm here to learn, not to be coddled. Sarah studied the girl's face, noting the controlled expression that revealed little but suggested much. Why are you really here, Emily? Most teenagers your age are worried about college applications, not long-range marksmanship. My reasons are my own, she answered, meeting Sarah's gaze directly, but I can assure you they're sufficient. Thompson and Sarah exchanged glances. There was something in Emily's demeanor, a gravity that seemed out of place in someone so young. You'll join the current cohort, Thompson finally decided. But at the first sign you can't keep up or that you're a distraction, you're out. Understood? Perfectly, Emily nodded, picking up her bags. As Sarah showed her to the dormitories, the Marine veteran couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial about this senator's daughter. The way she moved, the way she assessed every doorway and window. These weren't skills learned at prep school. Later, as Emily unpacked her sparse belongings, Thompson confided in Sarah outside the dormitory building. There's more to this girl than her father let on. Much more, Sarah agreed, watching through the window as Emily methodically arranged her few possessions. She carries herself like someone who's seen things, experienced things. Well, Thompson sighed, we'll find out soon enough what she's capable of. Neither instructor realized just how prophetic those words would prove to be. The morning sun cast long shadows across the 100-meter range as Emily Lawson took her position. Dressed in simple jeans and a faded flannel shirt, she stood out among the tactically pants and moisture-wicking shirts worn by the other trainees. Her basic Remington 700 looked almost apologetic next to the custom rifles that surrounded her. Marcus Reed snickered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Senator's daughter gets a participation trophy, I guess, he whispered to the shooter beside him, his Army Ranger patch prominently displayed on his range bag. The former soldier adjusted his expensive shooting glasses, making a show of his professional gear. Give it a rest, Reed, Sarah Mitchell called from behind the firing line, her voice carrying the weight of her Marine experience. She approached Emily, observing as the teenager methodically arranged her shooting mat and equipment. Emily's pre-shot routine was textbook perfect, checking wind flags, settling into position, controlling her breathing. Yet when she fired her qualification round, the results were decidedly average. Not poor enough to warrant concern, but nowhere near impressive. 82 out of 100, Thompson announced, examining her target. Passing, but just barely. The Academy founder made notes on his clipboard, his weathered face betraying nothing. Sarah watched more closely. Emily's form was impeccable, her trigger squeeze consistent, her breathing controlled, her follow-through disciplined. Yet her shots scattered in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. Your fundamentals are solid, Sarah said, kneeling beside Emily, but your grouping is inconsistent. I'm still adjusting to the rifle, Emily replied, her voice steady. It's different from what I practiced with back home. Thompson observed from a distance, his eyes narrowing. 30 years of teaching marksmanship had given him an instinct for talent and for deception. The girl's explanation made sense, but something didn't add up. "Let's see you dry fire," he instructed, stepping closer. Emily complied, demonstrating flawless technique without ammunition. Her body was completely still except for her trigger finger, her breathing barely perceptible. "Again," Thompson said. As Emily repeated the exercise, Sarah and Thompson exchanged glances. The disconnect between her perfect form and mediocre results was too stark to ignore. "That'll do for today," Thompson announced to the group. "Clean your weapons and meet in the main hall at 1400 hours." As the trainees dispersed, Sarah lingered. "I'll be watching her closely," she murmured to Thompson. "No one with form that good shoots that inconsistently by accident." Thompson nodded. "Either she's hiding something, or what?" Sarah asked. "Or she's playing a longer game than we understand," he replied, watching as Emily meticulously cleaned her Remington, her movements efficient and practiced. Far too practiced for someone with merely average skills. The academy fell silent as midnight approached. Master Sergeant James Old Bull Thompson made his final security rounds, his footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. A sliver of light beneath the library door caught his attention. At this hour, the building should have been deserted. Thompson pushed the heavy oak door open to find Emily Lawson hunched over a desk, surrounded by stacks of advanced texts. The senator's daughter didn't even look up, completely absorbed in a complex ballistics manual that most military snipers would struggle to comprehend. Scattered around her were notebooks filled with meticulous calculations, wind drift formulas, atmospheric density tables, and bullet drop compensation charts far beyond basic marksmanship. "Most students are resting for tomorrow's drills," Thompson said, startling the teenager. Emily closed her notebook quickly, but not before the instructor glimpsed equations relating to extreme long-distance ballistics, calculations relevant to shots beyond 3,000 meters. "I learn better at night," she replied, her composure returning instantly. "The quiet helps me focus." Thompson scanned the titles spread across the table: Advanced Meteorology, Physics of Projectile Motion, even obscure texts on meditation and breathing control. This was not the reading material of someone merely trying to qualify at standard ranges. "That's Kovalev's work on transonic boundary effects," he noted, pointing to a Russian text. "Not exactly beginner material." Emily met his gaze steadily. "My brother always said understanding the science matters more than natural talent." Thompson pulled up a chair, studying the young woman's face. Behind her disciplined exterior, he sensed purpose, something deeper than ambition driving her relentless preparation. "Your performance today doesn't match this level of study," he observed carefully. A flicker of something, caution perhaps, crossed Emily's face. "I have a lot to learn." Or perhaps a lot to hide, Thompson thought but didn't say aloud. Instead, he nodded toward her notebook. Those calculations would be relevant for distances well beyond what we're training for. "Theoretical interest," she answered too quickly. Thompson stood, recognizing the defensive posture of someone guarding secrets. "Get some rest, Emily. Tomorrow will be challenging." After she gathered her materials and left, the veteran remained in the library, troubled by what he'd witnessed. This wasn't just a senator's daughter seeking validation, or a grieving sister honoring a legacy. The precision of her notes, the advanced nature of her studies, Emily Lawson was preparing for something specific. As he switched off the lights, Thompson made a decision. Whatever drove this extraordinary young woman went far beyond mere ambition, and he was determined to discover what it was. Dawn painted the Montana sky in shades of amber and gold as Sarah Mitchell made her way to the 300-meter range. She expected to be the first one there, but the silhouette of a slender figure caught her attention. Emily Lawson was already positioned in the prone, working through dry fire exercises with meticulous precision. Your brother taught you that technique, Sarah observed. Not a question, but a statement. Emily nodded without breaking her form. Michael always said fundamentals were sacred, that a shot begins long before you pull the trigger. Sarah settled beside her, watching the teenager's breathing pattern, perfectly controlled. Your performance yesterday doesn't match your form now. Those weren't real misses, were they? The young woman completed her sequence before sitting up. Her eyes, usually guarded, held a calculating intensity. Why would I deliberately shoot poorly? Emily asked, though her tone lacked conviction. That's what I'm trying to figure out, Sarah replied. Your stance is textbook. Your breathing control is better than most operators I served with. Yet you're shooting like someone who's never handled a precision rifle before. Emily remained silent, studying Sarah's face as if measuring how much to reveal. I've seen your notes in the library, Sarah continued. Those aren't beginner calculations. They're advanced ballistic formulas that even Thompson doesn't fully understand. The teenager's composure wavered slightly. I need to know I can trust you. Trust works both ways, Emily. After a moment's hesitation, Emily reached into her pocket and extracted something small. She placed it in Sarah's palm, a spent .338 Lapua Magnum casing. The instructor turned it slowly, breath catching as she read the engraving. For Michael. You? Sarah whispered, the impossible implications flooding her mind. Emily nodded once, her eyes never leaving Sarah's face. I need someone to see clearly, just not everyone. Not yet. Sarah closed her fingers around the casing, mind racing through calculations and probabilities. A 17-year-old girl making a shot that defied the laws of physics and ballistics as they understood them. Why are you really here, Emily? Because the shot wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Emily's voice hardened. I need your help, but I need time. Can you give me that? Sarah pocketed the casing, her decision made. 3 days, then I need the full story. In the distance, they could hear the other trainees approaching. Emily quickly resumed her position, her mask of mediocrity sliding back into place with practiced ease. Thank you, she whispered, just before the range came alive with morning activity. The morning sun cast long shadows across the 600-meter range as the trainees paired up for distance drills. Sarah Mitchell positioned herself behind Emily Lawson, clipboard in hand, ostensibly recording performance metrics for all students. Her real focus, however, remained fixed on the senator's daughter. 2 clicks right, Sarah murmured as Emily adjusted her Remington. The young shooter nodded, made the correction, then deliberately fired 2 centimeters off target. Sarah's eyes narrowed. This was the 3rd time Emily had made a mistake that followed a mathematical pattern, each error precisely calculated to appear genuine, while maintaining a consistent grouping that suggested moderate, not exceptional skill. No random shooter made mistakes this deliberate. When Marcus Reed strutted over to offer unsolicited advice, Emily played the part perfectly, humble, grateful, slightly intimidated by the former ranger's experience. But Sarah caught the flash of calculation in her eyes. Your breathing's inconsistent, Sarah said loudly for the benefit of others. Then, leaning closer, she whispered, your mistakes have a pattern. You're shooting exactly 2 centimeters off center, alternating cardinal directions. That's not error, that's design. Emily's fingers stilled on the rifle. Without looking up from her scope, she replied softly, I need at least one person who sees clearly. The rest can't know. Not yet. Sarah straightened, making a show of writing notes. My office, 2000 hours. Across the facility, Thompson stood at his office window, watching the range activity with a furrowed brow. Frank Wilson entered, carrying a thin file. Found something on Michael Lawson, the administrative director said, placing the documents on Thompson's desk. Officially, killed in a training accident at 24. Unofficially, the timing aligns with that impossible shot in Afghanistan. Thompson ran a hand across his weathered face. and his little sister shows up with skills that don't match her age or training record. "What's her game?" Frank asked. "That's what concerns me," Thompson replied. "Either she's here to honor her brother's legacy or she's hunting someone." When Sarah entered later that afternoon, Thompson was studying Michael's service photo. "We need to know what really happened to her brother," he said without preamble, "and why Emily's hiding her true capabilities." Sarah nodded. "I'm working on it. But she's careful, calculating every move. Like someone trained for something bigger than competition shooting," Thompson agreed. "Whatever she's planning, I want to know before it happens." "Understood," Sarah said. "I'll keep digging." Neither realized that Emily, from her position on the range, had already identified their office window and could read their lips perfectly from 600 meters away. The Academy's perimeter alarm sounded just after lunch. Frank Wilson burst into the classroom, where Thompson was demonstrating wind calculation techniques. "We've got company," Frank announced, his normally composed demeanor visibly strained. "Armed men at the main gate. They're calling themselves the Black Eagle Squad." Thompson's face hardened instantly. "Davis," he muttered, exchanging a knowing glance with Sarah Mitchell. The instructors ordered all trainees to remain inside as they made their way to the entrance. Through the security monitors, they could see 5 men standing beside 2 black SUVs, each wearing tactical gear and carrying sidearms. At their center stood Mason Davis, tall, muscular, with a distinctive scar running down his left cheek. "Old friends reuniting," Davis called out as Thompson and Sarah approached the gate. "The legendary Bull Thompson and his protege." "This is private property, Mason," Thompson replied evenly. "State your business or leave." Davis smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Just checking in on the neighborhood. Heard you've got some fresh meat training here." His gaze shifted to Sarah. "Especially interested in your MARSOC veteran. Quite the reputation you've built, Mitchell." Sarah's posture remained rigid, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "My reputation isn't your concern." "Everything in this county is my concern," Davis countered, gesturing to the mountains beyond. "My boys and I have established quite the operation just 15 miles east. We train real patriots there, not government puppets." Frank stepped forward. "We've notified the sheriff. I suggest you leave now." Davis laughed, the sound sharp and unpleasant. "The sheriff? Old Pete Donovan? We had beers together last weekend. He understands what we're building here." Thompson moved closer to the gate. "Whatever you're building, keep it away from my academy and my people." "Or what?" Davis challenged, his hand resting casually near his holstered weapon. "You'll shoot me from 2,000 meters? Those days are behind you, old man." The tension stretched between them like a tripwire. Finally, Davis stepped back. "We'll be seeing each other at the championship next week. Should be enlightening." He turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, how's Senator Lawson's girl working out? Heard she's quite special." From a second-floor window, Emily Lawson watched the confrontation unfold. Her fingers gripped the windowsill until her knuckles turned white. When Davis mentioned her name, her breathing stopped momentarily. As the vehicles pulled away, she stepped back from the window, her face a mask of controlled fury and recognition that none of her instructors could see. The moon hung like a sniper's scope in the sky as Sarah Mitchell silently tracked Emily through the pines. The instructor had suspected the teenager was sneaking out, but nothing prepared her for what she witnessed next. Emily Lawson moved with practiced efficiency, setting up a position on the remote eastern ridge overlooking the academy grounds. From her backpack, she withdrew components of a custom Chaytak M300, a weapon far superior to the basic Remington she'd been using during training. Sarah watched, transfixed, as Emily assembled the rifle with the fluid precision of someone who'd done this hundreds of times before. The girl's preparation was methodical, checking wind flags she'd previously planted, consulting a small notebook filled with calculations, and adjusting her scope with micrometers of precision. Without hesitation, Emily settled into position, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. 2,000 meters away, a small target pinged. A perfect shot. "I wondered how long it would take you to follow me," Emily said without turning around, her voice calm despite being discovered. Sarah emerged from the shadows. "That's not the shooting of a beginner, or even an expert." Emily disassembled the rifle, her movements deliberate. "Michael taught me everything. We trained together since I was 12. Your brother? He wasn't just my brother. He was my best friend." Emily's voice cracked slightly. "When he died in Afghanistan, they called it a training accident. But I was there, visiting him at Bram Air Base. I overheard Davis and his men. They were covering something up." Sarah knelt beside her. "You think Davis killed Michael?" "I know he did. Michael discovered Davis was trafficking weapons. The night before he died, he told me he was gathering evidence." Emily reached into her pocket and produced the engraved casing. "I made this after I took the shot." "The 3,800-meter shot? That was you?" Sarah couldn't hide her disbelief. Emily nodded. "I used Michael's rifle. Everything he taught me about ballistics, wind calculation, earth rotation, it all came together in that moment." Sarah processed this revelation, studying the 17-year-old's face. "Why come here? Why the charade?" "Davis is planning something bigger. I need evidence to bring him down properly, for Michael. Justice, not revenge." Emily's eyes met Sarah's. "I need to stay undercover until I can access his files." Sarah stood, decision made. "You have 3 days to bring me concrete evidence. After that, I tell Thompson everything." Emily nodded, shouldering her pack. "That's fair." As they walked back toward the academy, Sarah realized the impossible shot wasn't a legend after all. It was sitting right beside her, disguised as a senator's daughter with unfinished business. At dawn, Master Sergeant James Thompson stood watching Emily Lawson through binoculars. The morning light cast long shadows across the 1,000-meter range as she worked methodically through a series of increasingly complex shots. "She's been at it since 4:30, Sarah Mitchell said, approaching with 2 steaming cups. "Barely moved except to adjust for wind." Thompson accepted the coffee with a nod. "Time to stop dancing around this. I want to see what she can really do." By mid-morning, Thompson had Emily running tactical drills that would challenge seasoned operators. Moving targets, extreme angles, rapid position changes, challenges that would reveal any weaknesses. But Emily handled each with the same measured precision, her breathing controlled even under physical strain. "Enough," Thompson finally said, his voice cutting through the mountain air. "Get your SHATAC, the real one." Emily's eyes widened slightly, the first genuine surprise she'd shown. Without protest, she retrieved the custom M300 from its hidden case in her quarters. The weapon was a marvel of engineering, with modifications Thompson had never seen before. "Show me," he said simply, pointing to the extreme distance markers. Emily settled into position, her movements fluid yet deliberate. She made minute adjustments to her scope, consulted a small notebook filled with calculations, and then became utterly still. Thompson and Sarah watched through spotting scopes as she fired 3 shots at the 2,000-meter target. All 3 rounds struck within a 2-inch circle. "Jesus," Thompson whispered. Later, in the administrative office, Frank Wilson paced nervously as Thompson laid out what they'd witnessed. "So you're telling me a 17-year-old girl might be responsible for the most impossible shot in military history?" Frank asked, his voice strained. "I'm saying she's capable of it," Thompson replied. "The question is why she's here now, and what Davis has to do with all this." Sarah leaned forward. "Davis knew her brother. That can't be coincidence." "We need to prepare her," Thompson said. "If Davis recognizes her or suspects what she knows." "She's still a minor," Frank protested. "We should contact her father." "No," Sarah interjected. "If she's right about Davis, involving the senator could accelerate whatever Davis is planning." Thompson nodded grimly. "We train her, we protect her, and we get to the bottom of what happened to Michael Lawson." Outside the window, Emily stood alone at the edge of the training grounds, her gaze fixed on the distant mountains. a teenager carrying the weight of secrets that could get them all killed. The dim light of the Academy library cast long shadows across ancient military texts as Sarah Mitchell found Emily hunched over a notebook filled with complex equations. The Marine veteran closed the door behind her and leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed. "No more half-truths, Emily. I need everything." Emily Lawson looked up, her composed demeanor momentarily faltering. She closed her notebook and gestured to the chair opposite her. "I was there when Michael died," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just in Afghanistan. I was at Bram. Dad pulled strings to let me visit him during a congressional delegation." Sarah's eyes widened. "You were 17 then, too." 16, Emily corrected. "Michael was showing me around when we overheard Mason Davis and his team in the barracks. They were arguing about weapons that never made it to inventory. Weapons they'd been selling instead." The young woman's hands trembled slightly as she continued. "Michael confronted them. He was going to report it. 3 days later, they staged an ambush during a routine patrol. They killed my brother and made it look like insurgent action." "And no one suspected?" Sarah asked, incredulous. "Davis was respected then. His word against a grieving sister's theories." Emily's eyes hardened. "But I found Michael's notes. He'd been tracking their operation for months. The missing weapons, the contacts, everything." "The shot in the valley," Sarah whispered. "That was you." Emily nodded. "The cell was real, but Davis was meeting them. Another sale. I couldn't let him walk away again." She pulled out the engraved casing. "For Michael. My promise." "How? Even the best marksman in the world couldn't." "Because they think like marksmen," Emily interrupted. "I approached it differently. I combined advanced physics models with meditation techniques Michael taught me. I don't just calculate for variables, I feel them, become part of the environment." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "That's impossible." "So was the shot," Emily replied simply. "I've spent years gathering evidence against Davis and his network. They're planning something bigger than weapons trafficking. The Academy was my way in. I needed Thompson's resources and your expertise." The instructor studied the teenager before her, seeing not just a student, but something extraordinary, a paradigm shift in human capability wrapped in unassuming determination. "Why tell me now?" "Because Davis recognized me at the gate. Time's running out." Emily leaned forward. "I need your help, Sarah. Not for revenge, for justice, for Michael." Sarah Mitchell, Marine veteran instructor, felt the weight of the moment. This girl had accomplished the impossible, driven not by glory but by purpose. "Tell me what you need," she said finally. In the Academy's secure office, Thompson spread the classified documents across his desk, while Sarah examined digital files on a laptop. The air felt heavy with revelation. "This goes way beyond a disgraced SEAL with a grudge," Thompson said, his weathered finger tracing connections in the intelligence reports. "Mason Davis is a key architect in something called the Restoration, a nationwide extremist network." Sarah's face tightened as she scrolled through surveillance photos. "They've been recruiting former military for years. Look at these training camps: Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. Davis isn't just running exercises, he's building an army." Emily entered quietly, carrying her own intelligence, gathered during weeks of covert observation. The teenager placed a thumb drive on the desk, with the confidence of someone twice her age. "Davis's men talk when they think no one's listening," she explained. "The Western Long Range Championship next week isn't just a competition for them, it's an operational cover. Frank Wilson joined them, closing the door behind him." "What exactly are they planning?" Emily pulled up a digital map on the computer. "Davis needs to meet with regional cell leaders who'll be disguised as competitors. If I can get close enough during the event, I can access his vehicle where he keeps his secure files." Thompson's expression darkened. "This is too dangerous, Emily. We should alert federal authorities now." "With what proof?" the young woman challenged. "Everything I have is circumstantial. We need hard evidence of their plans." Sarah enlarged a document on screen, her face paling. The Senate Armed Services Committee is holding field hearings on military preparedness next month. She looked at Emily. Your father's committee. That's their target, Emily whispered. Davis has been obsessed with making a statement about American vulnerability. What better way than attacking the very people responsible for military oversight? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Not just a personal vendetta against Michael Lawson's family, but a coordinated attack against American institutions. The championship gives us one chance, Emily insisted. Davis will be exposed, vulnerable. I can get what we need while he's focused on the competition. Thompson paced the small office. If we're wrong, we risk everything. If we're right and fail, we won't fail, Sarah interjected. We train for the impossible every day at this academy. Frank nodded grimly. I'll coordinate with security at the event without revealing our suspicions. We'll need coverage, but discreet. Emily stood straighter, her resolve evident. My father's committee, my brother's killer, and thousands of innocent lives. We have no choice. Thompson looked at each face in turn before nodding. Then we prepare. God help us all. The Horizon Academy transformed overnight. What had been a training facility became a fortress, with Thompson directing security enhancements while Sarah organized the trainees into defensive positions. Frank Wilson converted the administrative office into an impromptu command center. Maps of the competition grounds spread across his usually immaculate desk. Davis won't expect us to be prepared, Thompson said, his weathered face set with determination. That's our only advantage. Emily Lawson sat apart from the others, meticulously cleaning her Chaytak M300. Her hands moved with practiced precision, each motion deliberate and focused. The young shooter had abandoned all pretense now. Her true abilities were known to everyone at the academy. You don't have to do this alone, Marcus Reed said, approaching her workbench. The former ranger had become her most vocal supporter since learning the truth. We're all in this together now. Emily looked up, her expression softening briefly. I started this journey alone. I never expected to find allies. Sarah joined them, laying a hand on Emily's shoulder. Your brother would be proud of what you've become, the Marine veteran said, but he'd also remind you that vengeance isn't justice. I know, Emily replied. I don't want to kill Davis. I want him exposed, his network dismantled. I want the truth about Michael to come out. Across the room, Thompson gathered the remaining trainees. Tomorrow's competition isn't just about marksmanship anymore. It's about protecting innocent lives and supporting Emily's mission. Anyone who wants to leave now can do so without judgment. Not a single person moved toward the door. Frank entered with fresh intelligence. Davis has doubled his security detail. He's nervous, which makes him dangerous. Emily stood, addressing the group. I need to get close enough to access his vehicle during the final round. The evidence we need is there. Proof of weapons trafficking and the planned attack. You focus on the competition and getting that evidence, Sarah said. We'll handle Davis's men. That night, as the academy fell quiet, Emily stood on the ridge where she'd first revealed her skills to Sarah. The stars stretched across the Montana sky, reminding her of nights spent with Michael, learning to read the wind and weather. This isn't about revenge, she whispered to herself. This is about honoring what you taught me. Tomorrow she would face not just extreme distance shots, but the man who took her brother from her. Emily took a deep breath, centering herself as she'd done before that impossible shot in Afghanistan. The challenge ahead required more than skill. It demanded the restraint and wisdom Michael had always embodied. Justice, not vengeance. Purpose, not destruction. Emily turned back toward the academy, ready to face whatever came next. Dawn broke over the Bridger Mountain Range as competitors and spectators gathered for the Western Long Range Championship. The atmosphere crackled with tension beneath the veneer of sportsmanship. Emily Lawson adjusted her scope methodically, her movements deliberate and unremarkable among the sea of elite marksmen preparing their equipment. Across the range, Mason Davis arrived with 6 men, his Black Eagle squad members posing as his support team. Their bulky jackets concealed more than just warmth against the Montana chill. Sarah Mitchell noticed immediately, exchanging a subtle nod with Thompson as they positioned themselves strategically around the perimeter. "Remember, stay middle of the pack until the finals," Thompson murmured as he passed behind Emily. "Davis has 3 men near the parking area, 2 by the judges' stand." Emily acknowledged with the slightest tilt of her head, continuing her preparations with the practiced movements of someone merely competent, not exceptional. Her Remington 700 was deliberately ordinary compared to the custom rifles surrounding her. Marcus Reed, now fully committed to their plan, circulated among competitors as a friendly rival, his former Ranger training evident in his watchful eyes. "Security's tight, but there are gaps near the East Ridge," he reported quietly to Sarah during a water break. The competition progressed through preliminary rounds, with Emily performing well enough to advance but never drawing attention. Davis watched her occasionally, his expression calculating. When their eyes met briefly across the range, his smirk sent ice through her veins, but her face revealed nothing. By mid-afternoon, the finalists were announced. Emily had secured the 8th position in a field of 10, exactly as planned. Davis had placed 3rd, his shooting impressive but controlled. As competitors moved to the final range, 2,000 meters with challenging crosswinds, Sarah positioned herself as a spotter for another shooter, giving her clear sight lines to Davis's men. Movement at the tree line. Thompson's voice came through the discreet earpiece Emily wore. 2 unknowns with cases. Could be the backup team. Emily chambered around, her breathing steady. The finals would begin in 20 minutes. Nearby, Frank Wilson maintained his cover as an administrative official, clipboard in hand as he chatted with the event organizers while keeping the parking area under surveillance. "Remember," Sarah's voice was calm in Emily's ear, "this isn't about the shot, it's about drawing him out." Emily nodded imperceptibly. Her finger rested lightly beside the trigger guard as she watched Davis conferring with one of his men. The teenager's eyes, so youthful in appearance, held the focus of someone far beyond her 17 years. Everything they had trained for was converging on this moment. The announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Finalists, to your positions. The championship round will commence in 15 minutes. The final round of the Western Long Range Championship fell silent as Emily Lawson settled behind her rifle. Her breathing slowed to an imperceptible rhythm as she aligned her shot at the 2,000-meter target. The crowd watched, many dismissive of the teenager's chances against seasoned marksmen. 3 perfect shots later, the scoreboard confirmed what the judges could hardly believe. Emily had not only hit the target, but grouped her shots with unprecedented precision. A murmur rippled through the spectators. Mason Davis watched from the official's tent, his knuckles whitening around his binoculars. The girl's performance was no beginner's luck. It was the calculated revelation of skill long concealed. His phone buzzed with a message from Sarah Mitchell. "She knows what you did to Michael." The former Navy SEAL's composure fractured visibly. He barked orders at his men. Their movements suddenly accelerated. Sarah nodded to Thompson across the field. Davis was taking the bait. "Now," Thompson whispered into his radio. Emily slipped away during the commotion of the next shooter's preparation. Moving with practiced stealth, she approached Davis's SUV in the VIP parking area. The vehicle's security system yielded to the specialized device Thompson had provided. Inside, she located the hidden compartment beneath the passenger seat, extracting a hard drive and documents detailing the restoration's network. "Looking for something?" Davis's voice froze her in place as she turned to find him blocking her escape route. "You killed my brother," Emily stated, her voice steady despite the danger. Davis smiled coldly. Michael was a liability, too principled for what needed to be done. He stepped closer. You think this is about assassinating committee members? That's short-sighted. The championship is the demonstration, Emily realized aloud, showing you can breach security at a high-profile event. Smart girl, just like your brother. Davis reached for his concealed weapon. The real targets are already in position across 3 states. Emily launched herself sideways as Davis lunged. Her elbow connected with his solar plexus, buying precious seconds. She vaulted over the vehicle's hood, clutching the evidence to her chest. Security breach at the East Lot. Thompson's voice boomed over the facility's speakers as Emily sprinted toward the main building. Davis recovered quickly, pursuing her with rage distorting his features. A security team converged on their position as Emily reached the safety of the crowd. Davis veered away, shouting commands into his radio as he fled toward the service road. "He's running," Emily gasped, handing the drive to Thompson. "But this isn't over." Sarah checked the evidence. "This is everything we need, but his team is still out there. And now they're accelerating their timeline," Thompson said grimly. "Already coordinating with law enforcement. We've forced his hand." Emily watched Davis's retreating figure. Good. Let him run. The final confrontation was always going to be on the ridge. The chaos at Bridger Mountain Range unfolded with terrifying speed. As Davis's men moved into position, Emily Lawson caught Sarah Mitchell's eye across the field. No words were needed. They had prepared for this moment. "Now!" Thompson's voice crackled through their earpieces. Emily raised her Chatak, the familiar weight and extension of herself. 3 shots, 3 neutralized threats. Not killed. Disabled. Each round found its mark with surgical precision, striking shoulders and legs, rendering the armed men incapable of continuing their assault without taking their lives. Marcus Reed, who had once mocked the teenager, now moved with her in perfect synchronization, covering her advance as they pushed toward the ridge where Davis had retreated. "I've got your 6, Reed called, his former skepticism replaced by unwavering trust. The final confrontation came atop the windswept ridge. Davis stood waiting, his military-grade weapon aimed squarely at Emily's chest. "Your brother was weak," he spat, "too principled to understand what this country needs." Emily lowered her rifle. "Michael understood exactly what honor means. That's why you killed him." Davis lunged forward, but Emily had anticipated the move. Years of training, not just in marksmanship but in close combat, served her well. She deflected his attack, using his momentum against him. The fight was brutal but brief. When it ended, Davis lay unconscious, not dead, at her feet. "This is for Michael," she whispered, cuffing them with the restraints Thompson had given her. The evidence recovered from Davis's vehicle proved devastating. Detailed plans for attacks on government facilities, communications with domestic terror cells, and most crucially, video footage of Michael Lawson's murder. The Restoration Network collapsed within weeks as federal agencies acted on Emily's intelligence. Senator Robert Lawson watched with quiet pride as his daughter testified before a closed session of his committee, her composure unshaken as she detailed both the conspiracy and her role in exposing it. 3 years later, Horizon Shooting Academy had transformed. What began as Thompson's vision had expanded under the joint leadership of Sarah and Emily, now a respected instructor despite her youth. The Academy's reputation drew students from military and law enforcement agencies worldwide. On a crisp Montana morning, Emily stood before a new class of recruits. A spent .338 Lapua casing in her palm. "The impossible shot isn't about distance," she told them, her voice carrying across the attentive faces. "It's about knowing when not to take it." She placed the casing, still engraved, for Michael, in a small display case that had become the Academy's unofficial symbol. Today, we begin by understanding that true marksmanship isn't measured in meters, but in wisdom, restraint, and honor.